the radical, fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Sunday evening. It's already 8 o'clock night in Puerto Rico. It was a beautiful day over here. Rained a little bit in the morning, but then cleared up and just gorgeous day. Today we're going to talk about what it's going to take to get over this woke culture stuff. Some interesting stuff about China Rust Belt, China demographics. We'll talk a little bit about China. And then the shift to Miami. Is Silicon Valley moving to Miami? Is it? Is Miami Beach Silicon Beach? Is that what's going to happen? We'll talk about that as well. And then, of course, anything you want to talk about and are willing to put some dollars behind. So Super Chat is open. Alejandrina from Venezuela is here. We already got we got started with $5. We could make it $5 day. We could just do a bunch of $5. We'd have to do a lot of those to get to our usual goal for Super Chat is $400. So we could do that. There were like a bunch of, somebody was complaining, too many objectivist streams going on today because everybody seemed to be online today. I mean, generally, there's just like so much objectivism on YouTube, on podcasts. It's just all over the place. It was, somebody says, Rucka was on. Millennial Rand fan. I think she was reading isn't she reading Atlas Shrugged aloud until she drops, I don't know, for exhaustion or something? I think Harry Binswanger's list was on, and I think a bunch of others were going on as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's getting crowded in the objectivist podcasting YouTube channel streaming world. It's getting very, very competitive. I have to be in my toes now. It's getting very, very crowded. I hope you save up all your Super Chat money for the Yaron Brook Show. Don't give it to any of these other guys. I'm kidding, of course. And of course, I was the first one to do YouTube podcasting on, from an objectivist perspective. I think I was the first one. I think so. Anyway, we're not alone anymore. Started, I think, in 2015. It's been 6 years already. God. January 2015, I think, I started podcasting and then shifted to YouTube. So I would do a Yaron versus Elon debate. By the way, we're starting a new debate series. I don't know if you've seen this. We're going to do every Tuesday, I'm debating some European. That's the shtick, right? Some European intellectual, I get to debate them every Tuesday. So the first debate is Tuesday the 18th, in 2 days. It's going to be at 2 p.m. East Coast time, 2 p.m. East Coast time. And it will be on Marxism versus capitalism. And we got a Marxist to debate me. Somebody says Leonard was the first one. Leonard's was live. There were live questions. So it depends what you mean. The Leonard Peikoff podcast, yes, but then the Leonard Peikoff radio show was live. So yeah, Leonard started this regular appearances, commenting on current events, kind of almost a daily basis, getting the word out there. Definitely, that was Leonard. That was Leonard who started it. I kind of. This is my own spin, but Leonard started. Okay, so on Tuesday we're gonna do. I'm debating Ashley Frawley, who's a Marxist, and we're going to debate Marxism versus capitalism. Then on the 25th of May, I think that I'm debating somebody on the role of tradition, something like that. So every Tuesday, it's going to be some kind of debate with a European. So I think on Tuesday the 25th, it's Zuby. Do you guys know who Zuby is? I don't know who Zuby is. But Zuby, I guess he's a musician, a rapper maybe, a British one who's quite a conservative and big on tradition and on religion and anti-left. And we're going to talk about the role of religion and the role of tradition on Tuesday, the 25th. So every Tuesday, 2 p.m. East Coast time, I'll be debating a European intellectual. We'll see how many of them are willing to debate me. So that'll be interesting. There's just a bunch of stuff going on. What else? Yeah, I don't know. Having a root canal on Wednesday. I don't think you guys care. Yeah, Zuby has a big audience, so a debate with Zuby is going to be good. All of that is being done by ARI Global. ARI Global is doing that. So our presence in Europe, kind of ARI Europe, is doing that. Let's see. Anything else? What happened to Super Chat? It kind of dried out. We got Jew. I don't know about that name. You got to change the name. And Thomas, and we got $15, and then they're like ended. Like Jonathan yesterday started us rolling with $1 every like 30 seconds, and I guess that got you excited. There we go. Now we've got a question actually for $5. You should debate Yuval Noah Harari. I'm a big fan of both of your work. Somewhat torn about what makes human unique. Probably some combination. Yeah, I'm not a fan of Yuval Noah Harari, primarily because he's a determinist. He doesn't believe in free will. I mean, that pretty much kills it for me. And that video he did, that TED Talk he did on chimpanzees, it's just so wrong. And then him saying things like, individual rights, if you open up a human being, there's no individual rights there. So we don't have individual rights. That there's such an intrinsicist view, and it's so just wrong. It completely denies the human conceptual faculty and what human beings, what makes us unique and what we can do. But at the same time, a debate with Yuval Noah Harari would be truly amazing. It would be truly amazing. Something to be scheduled. There are a lot of people I'd like to debate, so we're doing a series of debates. I'm also hoping to go to the University of Texas and do some debates there. I'm going to be debating John Mackey from Whole Foods again in July at Freedom Fest, and then maybe we'll try to do another one in Austin, Texas. So anyway, a lot of stuff planned for the future, so I'm excited about that. I'm reading a book. I don't usually read books in hardback. I typically read them on a Kindle, on an iPad. But this one was mailed to me, and so this is the book, Really Good Schools, Global Lessons for High Caliber, Low Cost Education. It's by James Tooley. Some of you might remember, I interviewed James Tooley on the show, and it was fantastic interview. I really like James, and his work is amazing. He wrote A Beautiful Tree, which is a book I've been recommending for years now. So I'm really, I've started, you can see I started. I'm not far into it, like page 26. But so far, the book is fantastic. I highly recommend it. If you're interested in education, if you're interested in how capitalism solves the problem of education for poor people, James Tooley has it. He's figured it out. It's in the book. Actually, the markets have figured it out. Markets have already solved that problem. Tooley is just the one who's researched it and discovered it. And I highly recommend it. So far, really, really enjoying it. All right. Remind you, you can ask about anything. Super Chat questions, those are $20. get priority, and I try to answer all the questions, though. And, of course, we are eager... we're eager to meet our usual threshold, which is $400 a show. We're right now at 20. Only $380 to go. Alejandrina is here, so I'm pretty sure we'll make it, because whenever she comes, we seem to be able to achieve that goal. But don't, guys, and I know most of you are guys, with a few exceptions that I know out there, but most of you guys, don't disappoint Alejandrina. Don't disappoint Alejandrina. So we want some Super Chat questions. All right. Australia will wake up soon, and then we'll get a bunch of them. That's right. Some of my best contributors on Super Chat are from Australia. Let's see. Yeah, so I want to talk about woke. How do we get out of this woke culture thing, phenomena, disgrace, challenge that we face? And so I read two articles that I thought were interesting on this. One by Tyler Cowen, who wrote for Bloomberg on the issue of woke culture and kind of how he sees it going away and what the process will be for it to go away. And then David Brooks. Peter Brooks is a foreign policy expert. David Brooks, who I generally really, really, really dislike and generally really, really, really disagree with on almost everything, right? On almost everything. David Brooks wrote an article. What's the article's title? This is how wokeness ends. And it is in the New York Times. It's an op-ed in the New York Times. He writes regularly for the New York Times. And David Brooks is like a real centrist. He was definitely one of the neocons, but was never really. He's kind of a watered down neocon, and he's become even more watered down, and even become even more centrist, and become. Anyway, he's become much more collectivist and much just not very interesting, I find. Anyway, this essay I actually liked. Brooke hates Brooks. Yeah, well, hate. I don't hate David Brooks. I just disagree with him. And then Tyler Cowen, the article cited Tyler Cowen's article, so I read Tyler Cowen's. No, not like the guys in the Dispatch. I actually think the guys in the Dispatch are excellent. I think the guys I disagree with them a lot, but the guys in the Dispatch are actually good on a lot of issues. David Brooks is almost never good on any issue. You ask and you should receive any issues with pronouncing Rebecca Cow. Oh, you changed the name. Oh, good. Well, that's much better. I don't have a problem pronouncing Rebecca Cow. But what is your actual name, right? It's not Cow and it's not Rebecca. I know, Jennifer, you're not a guy. And there are a few others who are not guys. But the fact is that on YouTube, and maybe this is a result, I don't know what the result is. The fact is on YouTube, 92% of the people listening to Iran Book Show on YouTube are guys. So I know Emily, Jennifer, and Ali are not guys. And I don't know about Rebecca Cow. You would think Rebecca was a girl, but I'm not convinced in this case. But, the fact is, according to YouTube, I don't know. According to YouTube, 92% of the people who listen to the Iran Book Show are men. Right? So when I call you guys, it's to the 92% that I'm talking to. And yes, guys, you have failed. I have failed. You should bring your girlfriends to listen. You should bring your wives to listen. And you should encourage women to listen to your own book show. I mean, I take it personally that, thanks, Cook. I take it personally that so few women listen to your own book show. Put me in charge of Israel, Gaza, or make anime. I'm not exactly sure what that means. I don't know what making anime means. I mean, other than making cartoons, but I don't, yeah. I guess he'd be tough. A lot of people I'd like to be in charge of Israel rather than the people in charge of Israel. Rebecca is Daniel, I think. I think that's Daniel. I think it's Daniel, but I don't know why he won't go by his name. He keeps coming out with these funny names. Why don't we go by Daniel Cow? Cook is part of the 92%. Yaron knows nothing of webbishness. Weebishness. I don't even know what that is. All right, so what David Brooks says, today's show is all over the place. So all over the place. I apologize, right? I mean, we'll see how viewership is for today's show. Oh, so Rucka told you about me. Well, good for Rucka. Maybe Rucka is the one who's going to bring women into objectivism and onto the Iran Book Show. I obviously failed. Although women listen to more podcasts, which is interesting. They don't watch YouTube as much, but they listen to podcasts. And they're big on Instagram. And they're big on Facebook. But so it's like 50-50 on my Facebook page, but they're not big on YouTube. So you guys, women, explain yourself. Why is that? Well, but I'm talking to the wrong women because you guys are on YouTube. So what David says is basically this. This is a point that I made in my rational optimism talk that I gave a few years ago. The way woke culture goes away is that it becomes commercialized. It becomes just part of life. It kind of gets watered down. It enters into corporations. It shows up in advertising. I don't know. Did you guys see the semi-woke CIA ad, recruitment ad, where it's a Latina woman, and she goes through the fact that she's cisgender and intersectional, and she talks about the fact that she's got this, anxiety issue. I didn't understand that, because you'd think the CIA wouldn't want somebody who has a disorder with regard to anxiety. But maybe where she works, it doesn't matter. But the CIA now is using woke in order to try to attract people to come and work for it. Now, once woke becomes the establishment, I mean, not real woke, because it'll all be watered down. The CIA still needs people to do what the CIA does. And to the extent that they're going to be wokish about it, they're not going to last very long. Corporations, at the end of the day, need to make money. If they become too woke, thank you, Valdrin. Jeez, saved me hours with headphones on. If they become too woke, they'll stop making money. What ultimately saves America, and I think what ultimately will save America from woke culture, although every part of this erodes our culture, but what saves America is that people ultimately go to work. And they'll go to work, they're expected to produce. And at the end of the day, the production is related to profits, whether they like it or not. And yes, they can play their wokish games, and they can argue, and they can harass people. Maybe they can even dump people off of Twitter. But At the end of the day, contracts have to be signed. Customer needs have to be fulfilled. Suppliers have to be paid. Bills have to be paid. Work has to happen. Reality is right there. Thanks, Jeff. Jeff is trying to inspire you together with Alejandrina for a $2 a day. Just come in, support the show at $2. Anybody can afford that. And let's get the numbers up. Just $2. Anyway, that's Alejandrina's job, right? So the idea is ultimately that while woke is going to do a lot of damage, certainly cancel culture will do a lot of damage. The profit motive, business, the need to be successful will, at least in the short run, overcome all that. If you think about all those schools that we talked about a few shows ago, all those schools that are teaching critical race theory and teaching all this woke stuff and teaching socialism and teaching all this garbage to these kids. And then they go, and these are all kids from rich, successful families. And then they go to college and they get more and more and more of it. But you know what? Most of those kids are going to go to Wall Street or to consulting firms or to technology companies or do their own startups. And they're very, very quickly going to discover that reality is right there. The reality doesn't care what color skin they have. That their bosses want them ultimately to get the client. That they need to do their job. They need to present that spreadsheet. That they need to actually produce. And people who don't produce don't get paid. And these are people that were brought up with parents who were very successful, who worked hard and succeeded and achieved something. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Not Another Guitar Channel. This is not another guitar channel, so no problem there. Thank you. Thank you, Nathan. Thank you, Thomas. Thanks, guys. Wokeness gets you nowhere. Now, woke up call, woke IP call. Wanda Freeman is riffing off of woke. You can study ethnomathematics, but try doing ethnomathematics at Goldman Sachs, and you're not going to last long. And at the end of the day, what saves America, really, from our educational institutions is a culture of business, a culture of profit, a culture of success, a culture of achievement, a culture of production. Now, granted, that culture seems to be under attack and seems to ethnomathematics. You don't know what ethnomathematics is? Ian, Mikat, where have you been? It's 1 + 1 equals, well, it depends on the color of your skin, on what side of the bed you woke up on what kind of mathematics you're doing, on, just saying 1 + 1 = 2 is so white mathematics. Right? It's so paternalistic. It's so cisgender mathematics. Right? So it's interesting. One of the things that David Brooks talks about, and I think there's truth to this. What happened to all the 60s radicals? All those 60s hippies, crazies, Woodstock kids. I mean, some of them, a small minority of them, became professors and are responsible for the woke culture we have today. But most of them grew up. Most of them got jobs. Most of them became the me generation of the 1980s, the yuppies of the 1980s, the Wall Street hostile takeover people of the 1980s. Most of them went on to work hard and have successful careers. I don't think they were ever completely happy because they're always going to be torn and they hold bad philosophical premises. But in terms of the actual behavior, the actual lives, they ultimately gave up the crazy hippie ideas, settled down, got jobs, and became productive. Right? Culture is downstream from education, yes. But culture is also downstream in a sense from business. In America, one could argue, and I have argued, and I do argue, that the place in which the traditional, that's a word I don't like, the place in which the traditional American sense of life, there was we can do anything, don't tread on me, the individualist side, the can-do attitude, the productive side, the entrepreneurial side. That side of American culture is not preserved in our educational institutions. And it's not preserved purely in the culture. The bastion of that attitude, the thing that reinforces that attitude, the place in which it's still preserved and maintained is in business. Even relatively so-called woke businesses like Silicon Valley have a certain attitude to work. You're expected to get the job done. You're expected to do your programming. You're expected to work hard if you're in a startup. You're expected to deliver. You're measured by results. So, while you hear a lot of this woke stuff is just horrible and disgusting and depressing and offensive and racist, its ultimate impact on the culture is reduced by a culture that almost every American matures into, and that is the culture of business, the culture of work, the culture of production. It's indeed in academia where it doesn't die, it's in government where it doesn't die, where production and achievement is not the standard. Right? And even there'll be a new fad in 5 years. It might be worse than this fad, or there might be a backlash for a while, and then it will be worse than this fad. But generally, because philosophy is not getting better, intellectual ideas are not getting better, the culture is going to get worse. But it's not going to get worse falling off of a cliff, which is what it feels like right now, right? I think we're much more likely to fall off a cliff economically than we are likely to fall off a cliff culturally. So woke will go away as people get jobs. It's internalized and watered down and commercialized by business and, funnily enough, by the CIA. Steven asks, have you seen the recent commercial for Levi? Teenagers say, quote, global clothing consumption has doubled in the past 15 years. We can change that. We can wear longer. We can buy less. And when we buy less, we can waste less. Yeah, in a commercial for Levi. So buy Levi jeans while you're buying less. I mean, it's part of my point is that it's so ridiculous. It's so absurd that nobody takes it seriously. That what does it even mean now? If corporations are talking like this, then who am I rebelling against? Right? And remember, it's Levi's. Levi's doesn't benefit from you buying used jeans or old jeans. It benefits from you buying new jeans, and everybody knows it. And it's advertising in order for you to think, ooh, Levi's are good. I'll buy more Levi jeans. More, not less. Because what the commercial doesn't say, and what the commercial should say, is global clothes consumption has doubled in 15 years. This is a sign that the world has become richer. This is a sign that poverty is declining. This is a sign that more people are entering the middle class. This is a sign that the world is becoming a better place primarily for the poor, who can now afford to buy jeans. Maybe not Levi jeans, but jeans nonetheless. So, I mean, it sickens me when you take a statistic like that. Clothes consumption has doubled in so many years, and you disassociate it from what it actually represents. What it actually represents is prosperity. And what it particularly represents is prosperity in places that never had prosperity. It's not like Westerners are buying double the amount of clothes. Unlikely. It's the Chinese, Indians, South Koreans, Taiwanese are buying many more clothes than they used to, and on average it's double. But you won't be told that, because nobody wants you to know that the world is actually getting better. Nobody actually wants you to know that there are far fewer poor people today than there were in the past. Nobody wants you to know that all these multinational corporations and globalization and business and sweatshops have actually made the poor richer. They don't want you to know that. They want to keep you ignorant. And this is left and right. Just like they don't want you to know that the middle class in the United States has shrunk because there are more people in the rich category. Just like they don't want you to know that standard of living and quality of life of Americans has gone up dramatically, including the poor and the lower middle class, because of the unmeasurable benefits of technology on life. So they all, left and right, pretend, oh, things are awful, so that they can gain more power, so that they can control you more, so that they can regulate you more, so that they can be the heroes riding to the rescue. But indeed, to the extent that there are problems in the world and in our economy, it's their fault. So they won't tell you the truth, and they don't tell you the truth. It's not a conspiracy. It's just they don't have any incentive to tell you the truth. Our politicians don't. They want you to believe the lies, but primarily they want you to believe the lies because they want you to believe that they are the only ones who can solve them. That's their key to power. If the world is doing well because of relative freedom, if the world is doing well because of trade, if the world is doing well because of multinational corporations and technology and sweatshops, then what do we need these politicians for? Let's just do more of that. But that's exactly what they don't want you to know. All right, let's do a few of these super chat questions, and then we'll jump over to China. In keeping with the Brook theme, what do you think about Brookings Institute and Norm Eisen? I don't know Norm Eisen. Some people think they are designing a color revolution against the United States. Well, I'll have to look up Norm Eisen. I don't know who Norm Eisen is, so I'll save this and look him up. But the Brookings Institute is a left-of-center, massive think tank. It's the heritage of the left. It's to, I'd say, to the, not the progressive left, to the mild left what heritage is to conservatives. It's a massive, massive, massive think tank. I disagree with most of what they come out with, but they're not the crazy left as far as I can tell. Right? I'm sure there are some crazy leftists there, just like at Heritage, there's some real free market people, even though the institution per se is not free market. Right? Ali is asking for more super chat questions. She's asking for more questions, right? And again, you don't want to disappoint Ali. Questions. You can put $2, but just questions I get to get more answers from me. So I'm not a fan of Brookings Institute, but I don't know what color revolution means. And they're not, the Brookings Institute is not going to, well, I guess I'm not sure what a revolution is, but they're not AOC types. They're not way out there on the left, typically. They're kind of left, center, middle of the road. Yeah, we've got 130 people watching. Let's get the likes up. We're at 55 likes. We should be over 100. So please don't forget to like the show before you leave. And if you're not a subscriber, please subscribe and click on that bell next to the subscription button, and that way you'll be notified every time I go live, if you're interested, of course. Mark Pellegrino is making the rounds lately. Saw him on the Kibbe podcast. How come they haven't invited me? I'll have to talk to Matt Kibbe. Why doesn't he invite me to his podcast? I guess I'm not a big name like Mark Pellegrino. When was the last time you had him on the show? It's been a couple of years, probably. It's been a while. Yeah, I'll try to have Mark on the show again. He's good on cancel culture, partially because they attempted to cancel him. You think there's enough strength left in society to say no to these tantrum twits? Altruism has done more damage since the days of the hippie. Yeah, I think that's right. So we're not going to go back to the 80s, but I also don't think we're going to collapse them all. Not culturally. Again, economically, it's going to be a very interesting decade where we head from here economically. People, I don't think, realize the extent to which economic damage has and is being done in the United States and really globally. So we will see. But I just don't. So is there enough left? Yes, I think there is. And you can see it in the rebellion against wokeness and in the joke that wokeness has become, even among people on kind of center left who think this is all ridiculous. Right? Daniel asks, objectivism is hard stuff, I guess. Hard to change yourself. I'm studying objectivism for 5 or so years. Could you see or elaborate methods to implement easily? No, it's not easy. It's not easy to do, not because it in and of itself is hard. But it's not easy to do because everything around us is the opposite. Everything around us goes against us. So it's your immersion in altruism. It's the fact that you're raised in an anti-reason altruistic society that makes integrating objectivism hard. It makes integrating objectivism a challenge, right? I think if the culture was more rational, then it wouldn't be hard. Now, what would I say the method is? The method is, first of all, I would read Ayn Rand regularly. Her essays. And spend time really thinking about them. And then, do a lot of introspection. I mean, think about how all these ideas apply to your life. Think about what selfishness, kind of concretize for yourself what selfishness is. I mean, it's hard for me to give you advice without knowing what the particular issues are that you're having with the philosophy. But take the ethics very seriously. Apply them to your life. Focus less on what Ayn Rand wrote about politics, although it's important because there are a lot of interesting psychological observations there. But focus on what she wrote on ethics. And apply. And go out of your comfort zone. Listen to my shows on Yaron's Rules for Life, because I think they embrace some of this idea of how to apply objectivism in your life. Rebecca Cow says, is Ali single? I think she is, but you're not going to win her over with a name like Rebecca Cow. It's just not happening. So, Daniel, I think you have to start fresh with Ali to have a chance. And yeah, you'd be lucky. All right. Do you think China tries to use military force to take over Taiwan in the next 10 years? Should the U.S. respond with a military response? If they do, don't we have a treaty with Taiwan? Well, I'll start with the ending. We do have a defense treaty with Taiwan. We are committed to the defense of Taiwan. So I think as long as we have a treaty, yes, I think the United States should respond militarily to defend Taiwan. You know, one could question whether we should have a treaty, but that's a different issue. We do have one. We have to live up to our treaties. Will China do it? I think it depends on a lot of different factors. The worse the domestic situation in China becomes, the more likely it is that China will look for an adventure to rile up nationalist pride, to rile up national feelings, and to go to war. That's what authoritarians do when they've got problems internally, when they've got problems with their own people. They try to find an enemy, and they try to go to war. So the weaker China becomes internally, economically, culturally, the more maybe issues they have with demonstrations, uprisings, problems with young people, the more likely it is they will try to go after Taiwan. That's one factor. The second factor is American weakness. The more the U.S. is perceived weak, the more the U.S. is perceived uninterested in the world, the more the U.S. is perceived as appeasing dictators, as it was under Obama and Trump, and to some extent will continue under Biden, but certainly under Obama and Trump. The more the United States is perceived weak and appeasing of dictators and uninterested in the world, the more likely it is that China will do something. So Wanda Freeman says the Chinese people are already hyper-nationalistic. Some of them are, right? A significant number of them are. But a lot of them are individualistic in the sense that they want a better life for themselves, and they want to be successful, and they want to consume more, and they want to have more wealth. And if they start turning against their own government, then the Chinese government will use the nationalism to rile them up, to divert their attention, to blame their economic problems on the United States, or blame their economic problems on Taiwan, blame their economic problems on other countries, right? And that's when Taiwan is in danger. So authoritarians prey on weakness, and they use foreign entanglement to divert attention from weakness internally. And if their foe is weak, i.e. the United States, then they take advantage of them. Gail says, asked, did the United States have a defense treaty with Canada? Canada could never defend itself. I mean, from whom? Whom would want to invade Canada? It's way too cold. But it's Canada's part of NATO. So the answer is yes. I mean, we have a defense treaty with Canada, and the same with Western Europe. NATO is a defense alliance, so that we're committed to defending Western Europe. We're committed to defending Canada, so those are real, right? Okay, so since we're talking about China, so I read a couple of fascinating articles about China. So China just did a census, its 2020 census. And China has these 3 provinces in the north. I can't remember their names, and it doesn't really matter. But 3 provinces in the north. The north of the country is cold. It's cold. It's close to Siberia. It's anyway. The provinces in the north are provinces dominated by state-run enterprises. These are provinces that have seen the least amount of economic liberalization. These are provinces that have not seen the effect of markets. Provinces where socialism is still relatively strong ideologically, and where, again, state-run enterprises rule. And it's also where much of the heavy industry in China is produced. Mostly for internal purposes, less for exports. Right? I think Dalian would be part of that, yes. Now, the myth that the left in the United States and many in Asia and in Europe would like us to believe is that China is an example of a central planning success. It's an example where state-run enterprises have launched China from a poor country into a relative middle-class country. And yet, the three provinces in the north prove the opposite. The three provinces in the north have seen the least market changes. And as a consequence, these provinces are seeing massive declines in population. So between 2010 and 2020, for years, the political officials in these provinces kept saying, no real population decline, no real changes, everything's fine, everything's great here, everything's right on track. The census just came out, and I guess even in an authoritarian country like China, they can't lie all the time. And the census shows that the population in these three provinces has declined by 11% over the last decade. Now that's massive. We think people are leaving California or Illinois or New York. The decline in those states are nothing as compared to 11% in these three provinces in China. And the reason is obvious. If you're young and you're ambitious, you go south. Not only because of the weather in the South China is much better, but because of opportunities. Because of opportunities for entrepreneurship, because of opportunities in tech, because of opportunities to make money, because of opportunities to participate in a market. So even within China, what we are seeing is massive migration away from socialism and towards less socialism, more markets. So to the extent that the southern regions, the ones close to Hong Kong, are relatively free market, they're unregulated. I mean, it's still authoritarian, but it's unregulated to a large extent. Places like Guangzhou and Shenzhen, where the north is heavily controlled, heavily regulated, heavily politicized, heavily socialist. The movement is not within China from the places that are relatively free to the places that are socialist because central planning works so well. No, the movement is from the socialist areas within China to the areas that have more freedom, economic freedom. So even within China, capitalism is winning. Markets are winning. Please don't forget to like the show before you leave. We still have way fewer likes than we should have, given how many people are watching and I assume liking the show, or at least enjoying parts of it. So please like the show. Shanghai, is another example. Sorry, I get distracted. Shanghai is another example of a city where people are flocking to because of opportunities, because of markets, because it's relatively economically free. Somebody is asking, I don't know if those are Chinese characters or what characters they are, but does anyone know of objectivist resources in finding your purpose and deciding on a career path? I've done a number of shows on that, so you can find them here. I think you can also find stuff on the Ayn Rand Institute website and on Leonard Peikoff's podcast. If you go to Leonard Peikoff podcasts and put in purpose, you'll find a lot of stuff on purpose there. Now, China right, thank you, Jeff. Yes, I need to remind everybody that to the extent that you can, we very much appreciate your support. You can support the show in a variety of different ways. You can support it monthly at YaronBrookShow.com/support, at Patreon.com, Yaron Brook Show, and Subscribestar Yaron Brook Show, Locals on Yaron Brook Show. Or you can also support the show here on Super Chat. One of the advantages of using Super Chat is you get to ask a question and put some dollar amounts to it. And I promise to answer those questions. Of course, the more dollars you put associated with it, the more likely you are to get an answer. We have an ongoing kind of goal to reach $400 a show. We're at about just under 170 right now, so there's still 230 to go. So any support that you can provide tonight would be greatly appreciated by myself and Allie. Allie is very motivated by goals. She's very goal-oriented. She set this goal of 400 a show, and she works the chat in order to achieve it, and I help her out. So please help Allie achieve our goal of $400 a show. And if any of you can afford and are so inclined to jump in with a $100 contribution, that would be fantastic, and it would make my interruptions a lot fewer and less fundraising pitches and more actual content. So if anybody has $100, $200, $300 that they'd like to contribute to the Yaron Brook Show, and I'm going to give you a studio update in a minute. So one of the real big issues out in China is demographics. And one of the big issues now in the Northeast China is demographics. Because what is happening in Northeast China is not only people are moving to the south, but who is moving to the south? Well, it's young people. It's young people who are ambitious. They're moving to the south to find opportunity, and they're leaving behind them an elderly population, a population that's getting older constantly, that is producing less and less, that is incredibly inefficient, that has less and less wealth. And generally, China is going to start aging very quickly. The demographics are very bad. In spite of loosening up the one-child policy, it's still a shrinking population. There's still many restrictions on having kids, having more than one child, even though the one-child policy officially is over. There's still lots of disincentives to have more kids. And China's facing a real issue where, until now, Chinese economic growth, like all economic growth, was driven by investment. And one of the things that made economic growth possible in China is the fact that the Chinese save a lot. We in the West consume, they save. Savings is investment, ultimately leads, it's not the only fact, obviously, but ultimately leads, investment leads to entrepreneurship, job creation, economic growth, more savings, more investment, more jobs, that virtuous cycle. Indeed, investment is at the heart of economic growth. Investment is essential for economic growth. It's not sufficient for economic growth. What you really need are ideas implemented in reality. What you really need is innovation. Michael asks, would I go skydiving for $100,000? No. But keep upping the number. There is a number at which I would go skydiving. 100,000 isn't it? 100,000 isn't it? It's got to be higher than that. So, part of the problem is that modern economists keep urging China to become a consumer economy and to focus on consumption. But and not on savings, and not on investment. But that's a recipe for decline. You've got an aging population that are probably going to consume anyway. But then what you really need is to somehow continue the investment so you have continued job growth, So you have continued economic growth. And the job growth doesn't have to be literally more jobs, because if you've got a shrinking population, you don't need more jobs. But improved productivity, you could do that through robots. Ragnar of the Desert, thank you. Really appreciate that. So China is getting bad economic advice. China should be focused on innovation. China should be focused on production. China should be focused on investment. China should be focused on more freedom, more innovators, more entrepreneurs, more ingenuity. Right? Instead of, let's become consumers instead of producers. No. You want to continue being producers. You might want to be smarter producers. You might want to be more innovative producers. You might want to be more high-end producers. But at the end of the day, you have to produce. That's where wealth comes from. So China's going to have to solve its demographic problem, and they don't know exactly how to do it, and they're getting bad advice. Not for me. Nobody comes and asks me, nobody of influence, because nobody wants to implement what I want them to do. So nobody ever asked my advice. Not Israel, not China, not the US, not Canada. It would be fun if somebody did, and then we actually implemented. We could actually see the world changing before our eyes. All right, Michael writes, incremental improvement repeated is virtually unstoppable. Why? If you stop it, then it doesn't repeat anymore. Incremental improvement could be repeated, and stopped. So I'm not sure I get the idea that it has to be in perpetuity. It will only be in perpetuity if the conditions are appropriate for the continued improvement. Rebecca Cow asks, speaking of savings, did you see the article that Sheila Bair wrote for the Wall Street Journal? No. I mean, she's pretty smart, so I usually learn something when she writes something. I'll look for it. Thank you for pointing that out. So I will check out Sheila Blair, and I think it's Blair, not Bear. I'll look for her article. She used to run the FDIC. She's a statist, but a pretty smart one. Did scientific racism lose credibility from the end of World War II until now? Yeah, I definitely think it lost credibility. I don't know. Certainly in World War II because of the Nazis, and then it continued to lose credibility with the Civil Rights Movement. All forms of racism lost credibility, and then only recently, with the rise of the alt-right and with the rise of critical race theory, has scientific racism kind of made a bit of a comeback. Not too much, but a bit. Do sociopaths and even the most evasive, delusional people like Bernie Madoff not feel guilty even on some level when they hurt others and act in predatory manner? No, I mean, Bernie Madoff certainly felt guilty. I mean, he admitted to feeling guilty. So there's no question that Bernie Madoff felt guilty. I don't think Bernie Madoff was a sociopath. I think Bernie Madoff was primarily just a fool, a smart fool, but somebody who let his emotions carry the day and got himself into a position where he was too scared to admit what he had done, even though he was suffering from the lying and felt immensely guilty. He was willing to bear the guilt and the suffering and the sleepless nights because he was too afraid to admit what he had done, right? All right, and I don't know enough about sociopaths to tell you, but if sociopaths really don't feel anything, I don't think that's true of Bernie Madoff. It's been 25 centigrades in Alberta for 3 days. More than that, and my blood boils. I could never live down south in that heat. I could never live in Alberta. What can I say? I don't know what's 25 degrees Celsius in Fahrenheit. Somebody do the math. And I'll let you know if that's too hot or not. Sounds pretty comfortable to me. Rebecca says, Rebecca Cow says, Madoff isn't feeling anything anymore. True. He died a pretty miserable, pathetic death because of, he was guilt-ridden because of everything that he had done and because of how miserable he was. All right, before we talk about Miami and tech, and of course, any kind of big questions, any kind of deep questions, anything intriguing you, anything you'd like to ask me. We got 143 people listening right now. Some of you must have questions. At $2, at $5, at $10, at $100, at $50, at $20. $20 is a good number. Feel free to ask the questions. All right. We are at 214. So $185, and we get to Alejandrina's goal of $400. Let's see. Yes. So Tyler Cowan went to Miami, and because Miami's like the place these days, and Miami's awesome, and Cook, really. Miami's awesome, and and it's being touted as the next Silicon Valley. That all these tech companies are moving to Miami, and VCs are moving to Miami, and tech people are moving to Miami, and it's a big VC thing, and everybody's moving to Miami, and it's the place. Somebody says 23 Celsius is 74 degrees Fahrenheit. No, 25 is like beautiful. 25 is perfection. 25 is amazing. Anything under 80. I mean, 70 to 80 degrees Fahrenheit is just 70. In Puerto Rico, it's 70 to 90 all year round. Winter is more around 80. Summer is more around upper 80s to 90. In the evening, it goes down to 70, 75, 76. It's perfection. 25, your blood boils. There's something wrong, guys. There's something just wrong. You got to start living. 25 is 77. 77 is like almost perfect weather. I can't think of a better temperature. Anyway, in Miami, it's too hot and humid in the summer, but everybody says that Miami is the next Silicon Valley, but it's not. It's not going to be. I agree with Tyler Cowan. He says the same thing. What is Miami missing? Why? Here's a question for you guys, and I don't have to put any money on it. Why do you think Miami will not be the next Silicon Valley? What is the primary ingredient that Miami is missing that would help it become the next Silicon Valley? Right? Somebody says it's missing young people. Not true. I think Miami has a lot of young people. I don't think it's I think it's probably more youthful than California in many ways. Right? Well, a workforce could move there, right? A workforce could move there. Yeah, Bree says they don't have Stanford. And it's not just Stanford. You think about the Bay Area. Bay Area has Berkeley, which is one of the top universities in the world and has a great engineering school. The Bay Area has Stanford, of course, which has one of the best universities in the world and excellent in sciences and engineering and excellent in commercializing the discoveries of its scientists. But the Bay Area has a number of other universities, but those are the two biggies. It doesn't have that. It doesn't have the universities. I mean, Miami is a party town. It's a great place to hang out. It's a great place, once you've made your money in Silicon Valley, to come and spend it. It's a great place for spending money. It's not clear to me that it's a great place to make money. It doesn't have the universities. It doesn't have the network. and it hasn't built a network, and you can't build a network overnight. Like Austin, Texas now has a network. But Austin started building that network. Austin started becoming a tech center in the late 1980s, early 1990s. Because a lot of defense industry tech stuff was down there. And as those industries closed, a lot of the engineers, and then the University of Texas is crucial. But then they started, and then venture capitalists started showing up in Texas in the early 90s. And then they started building up an infrastructure. And of course, Dell was there, and a lot of Dell engineers left and started companies, and people started moving to take jobs. And then, of course, other technology companies started putting themselves in Texas. And when you had the universities and everything else, Texas Instruments was in Dallas. I'm pretty sure Texas Instruments in Dallas. But it suddenly became this big tech center. Austin is mostly software, but what about Dell? Dell is hardware. And remember, not Hewlett-Packard, Compaq. You remember Compaq? Compaq was Houston. Texas Instruments was Dallas. So Texas has had a tech thing, but Austin took off because Austin has the university and it built the network effect. And it had a good relationship with Silicon Valley. Miami is too oriented towards tourism, towards party, towards sunshine, towards the beach, towards, what Cook was saying. Cook was commenting on the women in Miami, right? So I think Austin is likely to be, and is, of course, becoming a Silicon Valley. There's some argument that that's the future of New York. That there's a big move of tech companies, startups to New York. A lot of young people, a lot of young talent. They love the city. They like the city vibe. North Carolina, David says, I think North Carolina, the Research Triangle, Chapel Hill, Raleigh, and Durham, that area, has a lot of potential because of the universities. I don't think Clemson is too small. Thames is too small, too in the middle of nowhere, too difficult to get to, no airport close by, not proper airport. So I really do think North Carolina Triangle, beautiful country, relatively business-friendly North Carolina, and world-class universities, Duke and UNC Chapel Hill. But then you go back to California. California is not going away. It's something that we should know. As much as we complain about California, as much as we talk about California, people leaving and so on, California is still the technology hub, the entertainment hub. The cities in California, while have a lot of problems, they're still booming. Real estate prices are still very high. That's true of San Francisco. That's true of LA. So they've got big problems. I think the quality of life is not very high. But don't write off California, in spite of its leftist policies. I love Florida. Somebody says I don't like Florida. I love Florida. It's a great place to go to Disneyland. It's a great place to go to the beach. It's a great place to hang out. And it's good for some business, to do some business. It just doesn't strike me. And it's got the least business regulations on an economic freedom index. Florida actually scores higher than Texas because it actually regulates its businesses less than Texas. So I think in many respects, I just don't see it as a Silicon Valley hub. I just don't see it as a tech hub. It doesn't have the universities and it doesn't have the networking effect that Austin has and that other places have. So I'm a big fan of Florida. Yep. Let's see. All right. So, yeah, that's the topics I had for today. So if you want the show to go on, you're going to have to ask questions. So we've got a bunch of them here. I'll start with Adam's question. As you know from Israel, Russia has an excellent education system that produces many inventors and engineers. Can China solve its age distribution problem with immigration from Russia? One of the ideas being floated in China is to encourage immigration. Now, Russia is aging faster than China. So, it's not clear that it's going to be that easy for them to get them from Russia, because it's going to become very lucrative for inventors because there's going to be a shortage of talent in Russia. But yes, for the first time, I think, in Chinese history, maybe, there's a real conversation going on in China about immigration, allowing immigrants in because of the shortage, because of the demographics, because of the shrinkage. And you're right, Russia might be a good source. They can give young Russian entrepreneurs, young Russian engineers. Russia's very good, have been very good in mathematics and engineering. And it's the kind of skill set that the Chinese could really benefit from. And if you combine Russian tech knowledge with Chinese entrepreneurship, you could get a very powerful impact, a very powerful effect. So Adam, I think you're absolutely right. And again, from the articles that I've been reading about China, there are discussions internally right now about the possibility of immigrants coming in. And I'm not sure immigrants from where. I haven't got that deep into it. But why not China? Why not Russia? They've got a long border with Russia. I would not move to Russia or Eastern Europe. Oh my God. I mean, of all the countries that I visited, Russia is one of the places that I least liked. I felt more oppressed in Russia than in China. Russia is in deep doo-doo, deep trouble. Eastern Europe, I just don't find it that interesting. There's potential there, but it seems to be going in all the wrong directions. Poland and Hungary are going authoritarian. The Czech Republic is floundering. It's just got quite a bit of problems. But I really, of all the countries I've visited, and I've visited 70 countries or so, real countries, not districts, real countries, Russia's the one I think I felt the most ill at ease in. Ill at ease. Great show you're on. I'm anticipating your next show on financial markets. I need a topic around financial markets. If you have any ideas, let me know. Happy to do it. How was the Lex podcast with Malice? Seemed like everyone had a great time. Yeah, it was very enjoyable. We did have a good time. I like Lex a lot, and Malice was easy to get along with and easy to communicate with, and respectful, and it was very. I thought the interaction was very positive. In terms of taxes, the best places. Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, and then Georgia. I love Georgia. Georgia's an amazing place. I don't know much about the Baltic countries, even though my ancestors are originally from Lithuania. So that's where my ancestors were. The ones who stayed in Lithuania didn't survive Hitler, but they're all on. 3 of my 4 grandparents are from Lithuania. Do you remember what was the craziest thing you did to impress your wife when you were dating her? God, what was the craziest? I did crazy stuff, but I can't remember doing crazy stuff to impress her. That was just me. No. I mean, I took a hiking to this canyon where maybe this is me impressing her, or maybe me trying to be getting her to impress me. You could look at it both ways. But I took a hiking in this canyon in the Golan Heights, where at some point you reach this waterfall where the only way to advance is to jump. I can't remember how tall it is, but it's, I don't know, 10, 15 feet, something like that. So a non-trivial jump. And I jumped. I'd done it before. And she just went up and without a second thought, she leaped off. I was super impressed. And she says later, she didn't tell me at the time, but she told me later that right, like halfway down, she was like, why am I doing this? This is insane. But by then I was already impressed, so it was fine. So I don't know if that qualifies, but anyway. Brian, thank you. Brian has got us very, very, very close to Alejandrina's goal of $400. So don't disappoint her. So now we're at $366.60. And the only reason it's only 366 is because that Canadian dollar is so damn low these days. I wish it was more valuable in terms of American dollars. So another $34 and we're over the, I'll stop bugging you. Your History of the Middle East lectures was excellent. Thank you. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Those of you who don't know about them, it's a series of lectures on the history of the Middle East. It's available for free on YouTube. It's audio only. It's also available on my podcast, on iTunes. Just look Yaron Brook, History of the Middle East, and you can find it. And, if you want, I think it's in 5 parts or like 5 hours or something like that. If you want to really understand the Middle East from basically the time of Muhammad to today, right? Covering everything, covering the Ottoman Empire, covering World War I, covering the Israeli conflict, but covering also just the division of the Middle East post-World War I and what's happened since the rise of Islamic totalitarianism. That's a great course. And then the second course I'd recommend, and if you enjoyed History of the Middle East, I recommend that you listen to the rise of Islamic totalitarianism, which covers from the Wahhabis in Saudi Arabia in the 18th century all the way through the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt to Al-Qaeda all the way to ISIS. And that is available also on YouTube and on iTunes on my podcast for free. So check those out. I think people enjoy the history things that I do. I'm going to do a show on the Great Enrichment. That's a term that Deirdre McCluskey has come up with to describe what has happened since the late 18th century till today and how rich we've all become, the Great Enrichment. So that'll be a little bit of history, a little bit of economic history, a little bit of political history, a little bit of intellectual history. And hopefully you can you'll enjoy that. So we'll do that as a show soon. By the way, if somebody would like to sponsor that show, you can do that. Oh, by the way, I think I'm going to start selling advertisement on the show. So if you would like me to advertise something you do, a product you create, something you're involved with, then I will do that. If you provide the text and a link and it's something that I support and something that I like, I will do that. I think I'm going to charge, for now, I'm going to charge $100 per show to do that, or at least until I have lots of them, and then I'll raise the price to, market demand. But so anybody who wants to advertise a product that they're selling on the show, let me know. You can contact me at yaron@yaronbrookshow.com, yaron@yaronbrookshow.com, and I'm probably going to have a couple of these advertisements ready soon, and I'm hoping to get 5 or 6. I don't want more than that. 5 or 6 every show, $100. That'll be really a really nice addition to the contributions that you make and to the contributions that Alejandrina get you excited about. So we're $5 short, actually $3.42 short. So somebody step in and save us here. Rebecca Cow, thank you again. You've been very generous today. Linda, thank you. Parts of Miami are awesome. Most of Miami is garbage. Yeah, I agree with that. But Miami can be awesome. The whole southern Florida thing can be awesome. When do you think the PRC will invade Taiwan? I don't know. Again, I think the dynamics, I talked about this earlier. The dynamics are either when there's when the Chinese people become unsettled, when the Chinese people are threatening, if you will, revolution, then the Chinese government will invade Taiwan. That's option number one. Option number two is more American weakness. The more America exhibits weakness, the more America exhibits disinterest in the rest of the world, disinterest in engaging with the rest of the world, the more likely it is that they'll invade Taiwan. So I think, as I said, the Obama and Trump administration, I think, sped up the process of China deciding to go after Taiwan. Biden's not helping. So I think it's two factors. Unrest in China, American weakness. When those two things peak, that's when they'll invade Taiwan to divert attention to what's going on in China. Didn't get to catch a show, but glad to see you on. Absolutely, Stefan. Of course, you can listen to the show later. And we made it to $400. Thank you, Rebecca. Again, Rebecca. Rebecca's like all over the place today. Just spreading the dollars around, spreading the love around. Thank you, Rebecca. And thank you, Stefan. And all right, we got a few more questions, and we'll call it a night, I guess, unless there are more questions in the pipeline. How do determinists not observe that their own choice are a result of a process of thought? Because what they ask is the question, the rationalistic kind of question of, okay, but the process of thought had to have a materialistic cause. And therefore, it was determined. Everything was determined about the thought. Right? What they refuse to acknowledge is the observation that you choose. The observation that you choose to focus, where you don't have to choose to focus. It truly is a choice. And they've got a false view of causality. Their view of causality is a ping-pong view of causality. Whereas Ayn Rand's view of causality, which I think is similar to Aristotle's view of causality, is that things act according to their nature. So a billiard ball moves when another billiard hits it, not because the causal relationship is not directly the other ball hitting it, but because of the nature of the ball being hit is such that when it's hit in a certain way, it moves in a particular way. And it's in the nature of human consciousness to have choice, to have free will. It's not this atom has to bump into that atom. Not everything is reducible into physical movement. Yoran, you once said your parents are disappointed in your career choice. Was that said jokingly true? It was certainly true. Whether they're still disappointed, it's hard to tell. I think they're over it, kind of. They're too old, I think. And I'm successful, so it's kind of a wash. But yeah, I think they were somewhat disappointed that I went into finance. My father was originally disappointed that I didn't go into medicine and that I went into civil engineering of all engineerings and not into science. And then finance. But I think the big disappointment was that I went to run the Ayn Rand Institute. Yeah, I don't think that was... Yeah. But so what, right? They have every right to be disappointed. Their problem, not mine. No, you're on Brook MD. Thank God. Mohammed says he's a civil engineer too. Yeah, I still... love the idea of civil engineering, and I was a civil engineer, and I enjoyed being a civil engineer. I diverted away from that pretty quickly, though. For activism to restore the ability to have a corporate takeover, what's the best place to start? These latest mergers are starting to look like conglomerates again. Yeah, I mean, we're definitely moving towards conglomerates again, and the days of hostile mergers are almost finished. I think you have to start with the role of the corporations maximize shareholder wealth. Because that's the moral purpose, the moral and economic purpose of a corporation is to maximize shareholder wealth. That's where the focus needs to be. And to the extent that hostile takeovers maximize shareholder wealth, they're good. To the extent that conglomerates don't, they're bad. And that's the measure. That's the standard. So if we're going to fight for hostile takeovers, which I think we should, I think we have to fight first for get rid of the stakeholder principle, get rid of conscious capitalism, get rid of all this mealy-mouthed, watered-down nonsense, and get to the heart of what capitalism and, of course, what business is about. And it's about making money for the owners, and the owners are the shareholders. All right. This is great. Thanks, everybody. We hit about an hour and a half. We hit the $400 goal. Thank you, Alejandrina, for being here. I don't think we would have done it without you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Rebecca Cow, for trying to impress Alejandrina, and by doing so, contributing so much to the show. But I think you're going to have to do even better than that in order to get a date with her. All right, everybody. A little more lighthearted a show than usual, I think. But that's fun, right? Hopefully you enjoy that. And let me know what you enjoy. A few things. You can sponsor a show, choose the topic for $1,000. You can get me to watch a movie and get a review, although it's taking me long, for $500. I'll get to secretary this week, hopefully. You can get one-on-ones with me for half an hour every month for $500 a month at YaronBrookShow.com/support, or for $250 a month, you can get one-on-ones with me once every 3 months. For $100 a month, you get to participate in the video hangout that we do once a month. Generally, you can support the show on YaronBrookShow.com/support at any amount is appreciated. And you can also do so on Patreon, Subscribestar, and locals, and those amounts you can do in any one of those platforms, and they'll be recognized for your perks. All right, I hope you enjoyed the show today. Thank you for all the questions. Thank you for all the support, and I will see you all, I think tomorrow. All right, have to come up with a topic. If somebody wants to sponsor a topic tomorrow and give me an idea, that would be great. Bye, everybody. I think I've got a sponsor for the Iran Rules for Life. So those of you who like the Iran Rules for Life shows, I think I've got a sponsor now that'll basically make it possible for me to do Iran Rules shows every month. So we'll start doing them into the future because he's going to sponsor a bunch of them. So I'll have that finally worked out, I think, this week, and I'll let you know. So hopefully we'll be doing more Iran Rules shows. Bye, everybody. I'll